Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Don't Ask Me Why. This is week 1 of the Don't Ask Me Why podcast. Week 1, you might say. I've been watching for many weeks. I thought, is this not the same podcast? It's week 1 of the NFL playoff season. It's a brand new season, see? So that's why
Trickery,
deception.
yeah,
Yeah.
flea flicker,
Trickeration. Trickeration, right. So welcome to the podcast. Roger here with my cohort Reggie. Reggie, how are you doing this evening?
Salute everyone.
So this is an exciting time of year. For those of you, let's say, to make a comparison between the NFL playoff season and for people that might have other things that they're into, like music or, for instance, movies. Every summer, Reggie, we know that there are blockbuster movies that come out, usually during the summer, right?
Yeah. May, July.
Yeah, that's when they flow out in larger numbers. And so to us, this is sort of the big blockbuster movie season for us as it relates to the NFL. We have 6, we're starting with 6 big blockbuster movies with stars galore, right? Just like in the movies.
Yep.
Many stars that we're gonna talk about as we get into week 1. We'll start with our picks from last week. And Reggie, I got to tell you, what were we last week? 5-1.
Last week we were 4-2-1. 4-2-1.
I got us at 5-1.
Oh, you're talking about this previous week.
Week, yeah.
Yes, we were 5-1.
5-1. We were 4-2-1 the previous week. With our friend Ratcliffe with his stellar picks, including Arizona, if you don't remember, to beat Philadelphia. But we were 5-1 this past week, and I have sort of a little problem, a personal problem that has originated from these 2 weeks of hitting at a really high rate. That maybe, I don't know, maybe you can help me with this. I've noticed that my wallet has gotten a little bit fatter over the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And and you don't think about these things, but when your wallet gets fatter, in my case, as a result of a lot of winnings over the last 2 weeks, it can have physical impact. Like if you carry your wallet in your pocket, for instance.
Where do you carry it? In your back pocket?
Typically back pocket, but over the last week, I've had to, change course because it can cause issues with sciatica, which isn't just for old people anymore. And it can make, it can cause some issues. So, I don't even know, with the role that we're kind of on right now, if I want to, be laying down a whole lot of money to win more, to make the wallet even fatter. Maybe we should just project our picks onto the people that watch the podcast and let their wallets get fatter. And, hopefully they'll figure out a way to deal with the fat wallet issue.
Yeah, hopefully they utilize a bank or electronic way of handling cash nowadays. So
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean,
hopefully.
I drive 30 miles to the sports book, right? So I
knew that.
Yeah, 30 miles. It's not 300. So I'll go to the sports book, and that's fun for me to go pick up my winnings from the previous week in green. I like the hundreds, and sometimes I get them to break. Maybe that's why the wallet gets fatter, because I get them to pay me in smaller bills.
Imagine how much fatter if you just did it via a sports app, a betting app, versus driving, and that gas that you save. But I'm no economist.
No, you're not. No, you're not. So let's go into The picks from last week, again, we were 5-1. The only thing that we missed last week, which was sort of a consensus pick, was the Eagles to beat the Giants. Didn't happen. That would have made my wallet much fatter, and we would have been 6-0. So that's all that stood between us and the perfect week. Ratcliffe Thomas, who was our guest last week and the week before, his picks last week were 1 college, 1 pro. He remains undefeated on the pro side, having picked the Steelers against who did they beat last week, Reg?
The Ravens.
The Ravens, yeah, in a meaningless game for the Ravens. So
at half strength, Ravens.
Right, and I had that on my ledger as well. So he also had the Huskies of Washington in the national championship.
That didn't work out.
Didn't work out too well. But college is not our thing, Reggie. That's not what we really focus on here. So let's stick with what we know and get into the playoffs. The cream has risen to the top for these playoffs. Before we get into each game and start to break it down a little bit, each of the 6 games, let's talk about some of the external factors that will no doubt come into play, and they might even affect our picks that we make toward the end of the show today. The first thing that I was looking at this week was weather, projected weather, and very interesting. So there are 6 games being played. 3 are being played in domes. Weather, not a factor. 2 of the other 3 games being played outdoors will be played in very wintry weather of a various nature. First and foremost, in Kansas City. With Miami visiting Kansas City for the game this weekend, the temperature at game time is projected to be 5 degrees.
Wow.
5 degrees. That's not 5 degrees wind chill. That's wind chill projected 10 to 15 below. It'll be the coldest game that the Miami Dolphins have ever played in their history. Okay. They have their record historically is that they are 0 for their last 10 in games that had a kickoff temperature of 40 degrees. Right. So again, these factors are something that as you make your picks, you have to consider, right? It can't just be like, who's had the better year, blah, blah, blah. You have to think about those things. Injuries. I know of a couple that come into play with the slate of games this weekend. One of the biggest one, of course, is TJ Watt at Pittsburgh. Now they're saying he's out. I don't know if it's mandated that they have to say that he's out at this point, but I did read something today that said that he was out jogging on the practice field where they were. So even though they've said that he's out, I don't know if that's official or not, but if anyone would be going above and beyond to just get onto the field and have their presence felt, knowing that this could be a one and done situation for Pittsburgh as a 10-point underdog, I would think that TJ Watt might be that guy. But that's a big injury factor. You also have some injuries in the Philadelphia game, the Philadelphia-Tampa game. The Phillies wide receivers are dinged up. I think Smith with an ankle and Brown with an injury as well. Both of one had to leave early last week. The other one didn't play. I'm not positive what type of status they'll be come the weekend. If they'll be 100, I know that they'll both play, but it remains to be seen how much what they are percentage wise in terms of full health. And then you've got Baker Mayfield, who is dinged up. He was dinged up last week. He was wearing a rib thing because he had a rib injury from the week before. And now he also is dealing with an ankle injury. Pretty much so goes Baker, so goes Tampa. All things to consider. And then the last factor that that I kind of had thought about was like the teams that are hitting their strides right now. That isn't an external factor, but the teams that are really closing the season in stride on a roll, and therefore maybe uh, being given a little bit more interest than they would have otherwise, and I include in that category like Buffalo and the Rams and Green Bay, and of course Cleveland. So, what are your thoughts on the factors like weather, injuries, and things like that, Reg, when we go into the weekend?
Yeah, I think it all plays a part in the outcomes of these games, especially weather. When you have weather that cold for a team that traditionally and just based on where they're located would never see anything that cold, let alone anything below freezing. A lot of these players, if they can walk, they're playing.
Right.
Players have played on torn ligaments, um, with broken bones and separated shoulders, dislocated fingers, whereas during the regular season, they probably would sit out a week. But being that this is a one and done for everyone, folks are going to make those sacrifices, whether it's smart or not. In the long run, you look back, and I know a lot of players have regrets about, hey, I shouldn't have played this game during that time, but I did it for the team. I did it
Right.
for that moment, and it makes sense. So I don't. If say for instance a T.J. Watt, Devontae Smith, if they can walk, and I know the legs are a lot more critical for Devontae Smith. Um, as it would be for TJ, although that's pretty much what starts his engine. Uh, but I do see them being competitive or being competitors, getting out there and playing as much as they can during that period.
It was funny. You were mentioning different injuries there. You were talking about shoulders, knees, and all this type of stuff. And you mentioned fingers. Are you familiar with when Ronnie Lott actually had, the tip of one of his fingers amputated just to be able to play in the Super Bowl?
That's called crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, but he was great. He was,
Yeah.
one of the best of all time.
Legend.
Legend. So why don't we break down these games here real quick, and then we'll get to our picks at the end of the show. Okay, so let's do a quick breakdown. Let's start with the games on Saturday. Let's start with Green Bay and Dallas. Dallas 7.5-point favorite. The factors for me when you think about that game are Dallas's record at home this year is 8-0. They really weren't even threatened at home. They were almost like a different team at home. I think that confidence-wise, even though they have a recent history of folding in the playoffs and losing early on, I think that they're going to have supreme confidence this weekend and probably have a big edge there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think Green Bay, you talk about teams going in, hitting their stride. I think Green Bay is one of the hotter teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
But I think that hot streak ends in Dallas. I really don't see any way of them losing at home with that kind of record, but just the way that they're playing at home, period.
Yeah. Right. Whenever you have a hook, as they call it, that half point, 7.5, 3.5, three and a hook. That's always an interesting thing to consider because Vegas sets pretty good odds. They're normally pretty close. So, but I do think that Dallas should prevail there. Then we're looking at the Rams in Detroit. A lot of the games this weekend, Reggie, I think, almost have like a soap opera feel to them. Right? They're like storylines coming into some of these games. Rams at Detroit. What better storyline? You have two quarterbacks that are playing against the teams that traded them. Now, in Matt Stafford's case, he kind of, made that jump to the Rams after the Rams traded Goff to the Lions. But there's going to be a lot of personal pride involved in that game with those two quarterbacks who are both having fantastic years. And you couldn't have a better storyline than Matt Stafford going back to Detroit to try to beat the team that he's played the majority of his career with. I don't remember another case like that in a big game like this. Do you?
No, I'm sure there are examples out there, but this is pretty significant. Detroit, they're pretty good. And I really think that the other shoe will fall with the Rams in Detroit. Detroit has come way too far this year with the expectations leading into the season, living up to that hype. And now they have an opportunity to host a game, like you said, with a lot of dramatics that are attached to it, with Stafford coming back, the prodigal son, if you will. He got it done in LA. Golf couldn't get it done in LA.
Right.
So Golf has a lot to play for. He has a lot to prove, to say, hey, you know what? I'm your successor. You're not my successor.
Right.
Okay. So I look at this being a high scoring affair.
Sure.
And I really do think Detroit is going to pull it off and handle their business. I really do think that this is a win for Detroit.
Then you have Philly and Tampa. I mean, we've covered this one already. We've talked about it quite a bit. I think that a 3-point spread is like perfect. Normally, it's the home team that is the favorite, giving 3 points. In this case, Philadelphia is the favorite for some reason, and Tampa is getting 3 points. Obviously, with the spread, I think it's accurate. The game could go either way. Philly has not shown us anything in the last 5 weeks to suggest that they're all of a sudden going to catch fire. And Tampa is, lately they've just been kind of tepid on offense, and their defense has been keeping them in games. They shut out Carolina last week, which is not necessarily anything to, hang your hat on, but a shutout in the NFL is still impressive. So they have a veteran defense, Antonio Wingfield in the defensive backfield. They've got veterans on the offensive line and the linebacking core. So I think that they'll hold their own against Philly, and man, that's a tough one to pick right there.
Do you know who Charlie Batch is?
Sure, Detroit Lions quarterback, and with some other teams as well. Number 10.
Yeah.
Number 10.
Yeah. There's been a meme going around on the internet saying that without the tush push, Jalen Hurts is Charlie Batch. That is disrespectful, and I know he's seen it.
Yeah.
So they need to go in there and, we like you said, we've been talking about this ad nauseum for the past month or so, this potential matchup happening. They better not allow that meme to come true right there, because really, quiet as kept, he really has been looking mighty pedestrian. Yeah. And I'm not going to say without the tush push, but this period.
Yeah.
So,
hey, do you think
they don't want to become a joke?
Do you think that Sirianni is in trouble if they lose to Tampa after the bad finish?
No. I've seen that. I've seen that as well. And no, what we've seen, and we're going to talk about these coaching changes, what we've seen, that's the least of your problems right there. You're fresh. You still smell the confetti for the Kansas City Chiefs that fell on them. You can still smell that in the air.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That was less than a year ago.
Yeah.
So that's the least of their worries.
Yeah.
What they need to worry about is that, we got half of the Georgia Bulldogs defense line and linebackers and cornerbacks. That might be a problem.
Yeah.
That might be a problem, in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
Outside of Swift, Jalen Carter, where you been?
Right.
What's going on? And he's a rookie, but still, that whole Georgia Bulldog aura and they need to cancel that. So they need to there's a lot of things they need to get handled ahead of
worrying about
their coaching situation. Right.
So let's move on to the AFC this weekend. We have Pittsburgh at Buffalo. Another potentially weather influenced game. I see that the prediction for the weather in Buffalo is 25 degrees at kickoff, some snow, winds 15 to 25 miles an hour. And so when I looked at that, my first thought was, who cares? Right? Because Buffalo and Pittsburgh, that's their pedigree, man. That's what they're used to playing in if they get into December games. The only, the temperature is not a factor. A little bit of snow is not a factor. But wind could potentially be a little bit of a factor. That's the only thing that might have a little bit of an impact on the game. But a little bit of snow, 25 degrees, these guys are fine in that. That's like that's like huskies going out and running around in that kind of temperature. They love it. So Buffalo -10 against Pittsburgh. I think that we all are on the same page in terms of who should and who will win the game. But do they have a chance to cover? I think they got a pretty good chance to cover. What are your thoughts on that game, Reg?
Yeah, that's a pretty big number. +10, they're getting 10 points. With Tomlin, Mason Rudolph has looked a whole lot better than he did a couple of years ago. They're going to keep it competitive. They're not going to, I don't see them winning that game. Although if they were to win that game, you and I wouldn't be shocked, I don't think.
No.
But I don't foresee them winning that game, but I do see them covering.
The Tomlin factor, to me, gives them a chance to win the game.
Absolutely.
Miami, Kansas City favored by 4. Gosh, I just can't imagine Kansas City.
I got 4.5.
4.5? Okay, I can't imagine Kansas City not moving on. What do you think about that game? What do you think about Miami's chances in that game more than anything?
Well, with the weather being as it is, or being as it will be, that's certainly going to slow down a very fast team. Now, then again, it may just be extreme cold. So you might deal with a little iciness, a little slick field. But if the track is still fast, then again, that may be a wash, because both are dependent upon speed, skill position players. I know when we talk about dramatics and the soap opera factor, Tyreek Hill coming back to Kansas City, I know that's going to play a part. I know Tua, when healthy, he's been slicing and dicing, but he's come back down to earth from the fantastic play that he displayed earlier this season. But at the end of the day, my confidence level in the Chiefs is just a tick higher than it is for the Eagles, whereas I still think they will be had in this next divisional games in the following week. But I think they'll pull it out this week over a Miami team that may be out of their element.
Right, out of their element. Well put. Cleveland is a 2.5-point favorite at Houston. I know that we've all been, wowed by C.J. Stroud and Houston and their accomplishment, the fact they won their division, and they're another team playing with house money. And actually, both these teams in this game are playing with house money. I mean, Cleveland, with their injuries to their quarterbacks, to their star running back, the first game or two of the year, Nick Chubb, and doing fantastic coaching jobs on both sidelines in this game. Stefanik and Houston's coach,
DeMeco Ryan.
Either one of these teams, I would love to. I don't have a dog in the hunt. Okay, I'm happy with either team that wins this game going forward. I'm going to be happy for them, excited for them. And the only thing that I wish on behalf of Cleveland, because their fans are so passionate, is that I don't think they have an opportunity to play a game at home, even if they win this weekend. So I might be wrong. I'll go back to research that after, but I don't think they'll be able to play at home. But either way, that's a great game. What do you think about that one?
Well, and to answer that, could they play at home question, it would take some losses from higher seeds, but they could. But as it stands, not as of now. That home game will probably have to be played in the NFC Championship game. I mean, the AFC Championship game.
Right.
But
Yeah. If they got
I
that far.
digress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But it's probably the most exciting game of the weekend. And I'm looking forward to two teams that I would say Stefanski and Ryans are 1 and 2, 1A and 1B.
Yeah.
I think Ryans is your coach of the year.
Yeah.
But Kevin Stefanski and what he's done with Cleveland, dealing with all the injuries, mind you, with Chubb and Watson and how those players have stepped up on the defensive side, arguably the best defense in the league. So it's going to be a barn burner. It's going to be a showdown of epic proportions. But I really do like the Texans to win this. They're getting points at home, so the confidence level isn't there. But they're division champs.
Yeah.
So I think they take a level of pride in that, not just getting into the playoffs, but they won their division.
Yeah.
So I think they're a prideful bunch. We saw glimpses of the 49ers blueprint and fingerprints on them all throughout the season.
Right.
So I do like Houston to win this against a Cleveland team that really has gone above and beyond what the expectations were for them, considering all the injuries that they've dealt with up to this point.
Agreed. So let's move on to some other topics this week. Coaching, personnel changes. Every NFL fan has their radar turned up high on Monday morning, the day after the NFL regular season ends. Everyone's ready for all the news to start breaking, coaches that have been fired, and all these things. I was a little bit surprised at how quiet things were on Monday morning. Us Washington fans, we all knew that Ron Rivera was going to be let go on Monday. That was an obvious thing that was projected. But other than that, there seemed to have been quite a few coaches who you would have thought were on the hot seat or would be shown the door. We're still sticking around and are still sticking around. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think we saw very slow action on that Black Monday. Arthur Smith,
right?
Pretty much that was a nail in the coffin. His histrionics on the field with the Dennis Allen and justified. I'm not gonna lie, that I get his anger. A part of that was I'm mad at this play and what you all did. But a part of that is I'm taking out my anger of the frustration of this season and the fact that I'm about to lose my job in the next 12 hours. And then, like you said, Coach Rivera, he did what he could. And really, to his credit, considering the circumstances, considering ownership during his tenure, maybe he didn't get the fairest of shakes. So I'm sure he'll land somewhere if he chooses to coach elsewhere as a DC or maybe personnel on another team. There are certain decisions that need to be made, like for the Raiders. Now, they're listed as a team that has a vacancy. Mm-hmm. I think they need to be removed from that list of teams with vacancies because me and you both believe that Antonio Pierce has earned that job.
No question. Okay? No question about it.
So put aside minorities, coaching, and needing more diversity. He has earned that, and I think his team believes in him. So I would like for that to be clarified sooner rather than later. At least it certainly won't carry on into the draft, but hopefully by the time the Super Bowl comes, they have a coach.
Well, I hope that they learned their lesson from last year. Okay, because if you'll remember, they had a coach that came in last year before McDaniel was hired. That came in on an interim basis, and had almost the same results that Antonio Pierce did this year, and the players galvanized behind him and wanted him to stay. And for whatever reason, his name eludes me right now. But he was on the coaching staff. He got promoted as an interim coach. They went on a run. Everybody, Raiders fans, they were totally behind him. And then they saw the bright, shiny object, with McDaniel, and, the rest is history. But hopefully they don't make the same mistake twice. Antonio Pierce, as you said, he needs to be signed to a multi-year contract. And if Raider Nation wants to be anything other than a middling team for the next 2 or 3 years, they need to get behind this right now and get on the bandwagon with the players on that team, because I think they have a great core, a great nucleus of players on that team. They need to upgrade at the quarterback spot. But defensively, they've played as well as almost every team in the league in the last few games of the year. And there was some breaking news as we go to record our podcast. There has been some breaking news in the last few hours in the fact that, in the college ranks, Nick Saban stepped down on his own at Alabama. Big shock to a lot of people. And Pete Carroll is no longer the head coach with Seattle. And I think that there's a little bit more to learn on that as to whether or not that was completely his decision to move on. He is in his 70s, or if he was sort of kind of gently nudged out the door. And my question to you, Reggie, when we look at both of those two guys, do you think that they would want to coach in the NFL, and B, if any teams in the NFL would be interested in, at the very least, talking to them about openings that might come up?
You're talking about Saban and Carroll.
Carroll, yeah. And even Belichick, if he ends up on that.
So we can throw Belichick in the mix. All three of them would have their pick of who they would want to coach for. That includes Saban in the NFL, because ultimately it boils down to leadership. Now, he had a failed stint, Saban, with the Dolphins. I want to say with the Cleveland Browns at one point. Jets with Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
The Browns. Browns with Belichick.
Right.
But they've sustained and accomplished so much in their careers.
Yeah. Since then.
Carroll winning a chip in both the college and the NFL ranks. That's rare in any sport. So they would have their pick of whomever team they would like to coach for. And with Carroll, I think he's falling for it. I don't think he's necessarily being pushed to the side, but it's more of a, hey, you mean so much to this organization. We're not going to usher you out unceremoniously.
Yeah.
Here's a advisor role, and I think that's something that he's taking with Seattle.
Yeah, I think they're looking at that. Yeah,
that's a nice little soft landing for him. But to answer your question, they could coach whatever, whenever, however, in any league, quite frankly.
Yeah, and they're two of the most energetic 70-something guys that you'd ever see, especially Pete Carroll. You see him a lot of times out on the field before games, out there throwing the ball around and running patterns, for his quarterbacks to throw to. And he's 72 years old. I hope that when I'm that age, I can still do things like that. Do you think I'll be able to, Reg? And that's a long way off, but
I think so. Yeah. So what, in another year you'll be around their age? So
no.
Work on that rotator cuff and get it loose.
I thought we knew each other better. I'm not anywhere close to that age, but
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
You think
I was thinking of a different Roger. My bad.
Hey, you think I'm pushing 70? Do you? Okay.
Barely 50.
No, that'll stay up here. I'll remember that. I'm like an elephant when it comes to that. Let's close it out this week, Reggie, with our picks for the week. And so we have gone by the moniker most of the year since the halfway point of as the prophets of the prophet. And maybe we'll come up with something different, like the Fat Wallet Boys. I don't know, something. Okay, maybe not. So, so let's get into our picks for this week, and we're picking all 6 games. We were 5-1 last week. We were 4-2-1 the week before. So it might be, and we promised you this 3 weeks ago when we had a couple of bad weeks in a row. We said, hey, the air's going to get back in that basketball, and we're going to start heading back up on an upward trajectory. And we were on point. If not for Philadelphia collapsing last week against the Giants, we would have had that elusive 6-0 week, which we'll try to do this week. So we're 5-1. We'll go for 6-0 this week. Reggie, what are your picks for this weekend?
Yeah, so after that fantastic week, that put us at 48-41-7. That's a 54% win clip. So we're creeping back up. If we can finish the season around 57-58%, that would be remarkable.
It's huge.
Remarkable.
It should get us some attention on a nationwide basis.
It better. So this week, I have the AFC. I'm gonna go with the Houston plus 2.5, hosting Cleveland. Houston is a home dog. Like I was mentioning earlier, I think Houston takes pride in not only the way they've been playing, but the fact they won their division. So that as bad as as bad as the NFC South can look, or the AFC South can look at times, there's still pride to be taken for a team that no one had any design or plan of them winning their division, let alone making the playoffs as a wild card. So kudos to them, hat tip. I think they're going to win plus 2.5 outright, but give me Houston plus 2.5 at home over Cleveland.
Okay.
I like the Chiefs minus 4.5 versus the Dolphins. Again, the Dolphins are going to be a fish out of water, so to speak, in those very cold climates.
Yeah.
So -5 is tough on anyone. I don't care if you are accustomed to playing in that type of climate. That's going to be tough. But ultimately, I think the Chiefs are going to stand tall, pull it out. Give me the Chiefs minus 4.5, hosting the Dolphins. And then finally, I like the Steelers plus 10 at Buffalo. I just don't see a Mike Tomlin team going out like that, getting blown out against a Buffalo squad that has been Jekyll and Hyde themselves.
Yeah,
they've picked it up near the end of the season, but they really were a couple of plays away from not being in the playoffs. So let's not let that go unnoticed and unrecognized.
Yeah.
So I do like the Steelers to cover a rather large number, plus 10. So give me the Steelers. They're taking the points plus 10 at Buffalo in that game. Those are my picks.
Yeah, I like it, and I like your reasoning on all of those. Very sound. Cleveland, Houston, that's a tough one, man. And like I told you before, I'm happy for either one of these teams that moves on after this weekend, because they've both been a tremendous story. So I'm going to take the NFC games. I'll start with Dallas and Green Bay. Dallas is a 7.5-point favorite. They're 8-0 at home. They played with supreme confidence at home. They're on a roll. There's a little bit of a soap opera factor with Mike McCarthy coming from Green Bay to Dallas, and now Green Bay going in trying to knock their great coach McCarthy out of the playoffs. But I don't see it happening. I think Dallas wins convincingly and easily covers 7.5. The Rams at Detroit. I see this as a really close game, and the point spread sort of depicts that. Detroit is favored by 3. I'm taking the Rams +3. And I think that there's a decent chance that that Detroit could win by less than 3. And then I actually love Detroit. I hope they win, but I still like the Rams coming in on a hot streak, getting points, and Stafford coming back to his old stomping grounds the first 10 years of his career. I like their chances. I like their chances here, and they've won a Super Bowl, so this isn't foreign territory for the Rams with this team. And this is a tough one too. Philly is favored by 3 over Tampa Monday night. In that game, I'm going to take Tampa. It's a tough pick to make. Philadelphia could, with their pedigree from last year, Philadelphia could turn things around on a dime, but I don't see it. I think that with the skid that they've been on, that it's tough to turn around a ship that is taking on water that fast. And they've got some key injuries at wide receiver. Tampa's defense is very experienced, very veteran, and they know how to take advantage of that. So I'm going to take Tampa at home plus the points, plus the 3 points. And so those are my picks. So those are our picks for the week. We hope that you have enjoyed our projections for this week's playoff games. This is, again, we consider it to be week 1 of the second season of the NFL. This first playoff weekend is one of the most exciting weeks of the football year. I'm sure that you'll all be tuned in like we will to every game, and we wish you the best of luck, especially if you go along with the picks that we gave you tonight. So, Reg, anything else in closing?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right. So we'll talk to you again next week and share the results. And we look to have some previous guests back on as we get further into the playoffs. Certainly the NFL players that we've had on to give us their analysis as we get closer to the Super Bowl. So thanks again, everybody, for watching and listening to the Don't Ask Me Why podcast. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll talk to you again next week.
Peace.